I definitely had some concerns with London, and it's not just the injury history and everything, but it's just more. Everybody talks about him being a contested catch machine. I just didn't see that. He caught under 50% of his contested targets while in college, especially this past year, and he had some issues with drops. I believe he dropped. It was like an 8% rate last year alone before he got hurt. So yeah, he's putting up monster numbers, but he's a volume guy. You have to throw him the ball a lot, and he's great after the catch. I just didn't see a lot of the stuff that people were talking about with him.
I had Garrett Wilson as my one, but I disagree in terms of the contested.
Good, I like this.
At minimum, he had 17 contested catches last year in 8 games. And he basically had double-digit targets in every single game because he was the best wide receiver in the nation while he was actually healthy last year. He was unstoppable. They were not going to throw the ball to anybody else, and no one could stop him. And I love that. It was just hilarious trying to see teams try different ways to stop him, whether it was bracket coverage, whether it was punching essentially at the line and then just trying to get in his way. I mean, there was no stopping London. So I still like Garrett Wilson a little bit more. But man, London definitely deserved to be an early first.
London was
wide receiver himself.
London was so good, even Clay Helton's coaching couldn't stop him.
Yeah, even Clay Helton's. Yeah, that offense and changing quarterbacks and everything. It was just he was putting up with so much and yet still dominating. 120 targets or so in 8 games is just that's insane.
Now, nobody was surprised that Charles Cross went to number 9, so there's really nothing to say over there. I really think Seattle was going offensive line, or they were going to trade out of that pick. He was the best player on the board. They needed an offensive lineman, especially they have Drew Lock over there. They needed an offensive lineman, even if Russell Wilson was there. They needed an offensive lineman. It's something they have not built over the last couple of years, and that's why Russ wanted out. Obviously with Seattle. So I'm not surprised with Charles. How about number 10, Lance? The New York Jets. There were stories going out that they were going to trade for Deebo Samuels. It didn't work out. The Jets offered, really after the draft, I heard that the Jets were offering the 10th and a 5th round pick. They were not going with that. So they decided to go, and there were stories coming out that the Jets, if there was a possibility, they were going to actually trade with Seattle to move up to get Garrett Wilson if somebody was going to try to trade in that spot for Garrett Wilson. What were your thoughts of the Jets drafting arguably the best wide receiver in this draft class, Garrett Wilson?
So my first thing that I want to kind of push back on was I heard that it was a 1st and a 3rd they were offering to Deebo Samuel, essentially the same package that the Titans got for A.J. Brown. So that's interesting that you heard a 1st and a 5th. But to get Garrett Wilson, a guy that can stretch the field vertically, he works really well over the middle of the field. You can line him up outside. You can line him up in the slot. Not the biggest guy. And there was a picture of the 1st round draft picks with Sauce Gardner, with Jermaine Johnson, and with Garrett Wilson. And Garrett Wilson looks like a guy that you just brought off the street to take that picture. Like, he's just a small little guy, but he plays a lot bigger than that. He's very physical. He does a really good job creating separation. To go get that number 1 wide receiver, he was my number 1 wide receiver there, and a guy that really fits in with what the Jets want to do vertically, stretching the football down the field, and then also with Zach Wilson, the ability to push the football down vertically. That's a good pick for me. And their next pick, we'll get to that here in a minute, Jermaine Johnson sliding. I thought Jermaine Johnson was going to go at 10. For them to get him later and also still get Garrett Wilson, that's a huge, huge haul for the Jets. I was very impressed with what they were able to do.
At number 11, what were you going to say, Steve?
I was going to say, we got 3 out of 4 of you that think Garrett Wilson's the number 1. Ray, are you going to finish off the sweep?
No, he's my clear number 1.
He said he was the number 1.
Yep. All right, we got a clean sweep then. There you go.
Now, we could talk about the next couple of teams here trading up for a receiver who can't break any tackles, and another one who's coming off of an injury now. ACLs aren't what they used to be, so I can almost understand that a bit more. But if we want to talk about the Saints and their whole process, sort of, leading up to this, I mean, talk about going to the beat of your own drum, I guess. I mean, whatever they're thinking is what only they're thinking. I like a lot about Olave as far as his route running and things like that. He's silky smooth. He's got pretty good hands when he's not, suffering from some concentration drops. But to have really no yards after catch threat, and to give up so much for a guy like that when, your defense is good, but aging at some key spots. You don't have quarterbacks settled, at least, I wouldn't call it settled, for the long term. It's an interesting pick there for sure, or a thought process to say the least. So, it's not so much, there's some issue with the player, but more so the process to get Olave more than anything else too is just a bit peculiar to me anyway.
At number 12, Travis, Minnesota was sitting there. There was 2 minutes left on the clock, and then all of a sudden this trade comes in, and they were, okay, the Lions are jumping up. They're drafting a quarterback. That's what everybody thought was going to happen. Jared Goff, I actually I was watching Jared Goff's camera on his Twitter, and then after the name got called, he was a sigh of relief. What were your thoughts of the Lions trading up with Minnesota to number 12 and drafting a very talented wide receiver in Jameson Williams?
Well, if you can't get Garrett Wilson and you can't get Chris Olave, you might as well get their backup, right? So that's who Jameson Williams was until the spring of 2021. He was buried, former top 100 recruit coming out of high school. I was really high on him in the process. I'm like a super nerd when it comes to college coverage and recruiting spaces. I'll mention it a lot, but he was a big deal coming out. And so it was really odd that he was kept on the bench and essentially was maybe going to be their wide receiver 4 last season had Jameson Williams decided to stay. And so going to Alabama and immediately showing up and just dominating all of the work and basically taking John Mechie's job. Like, John Mechie is a top 50 pick this year, and Jameson Williams shows up and like, by the way, I'm way better than you. I know you're still going to get a lot of targets, but I'm going to have the more efficient production and put up almost 1,600 yards through the air. So Jameson Williams is an incredibly impressive finish to his career. I makes me curious just thinking about what could have been had he just seen the field from year one. He could have had one of the best profiles we've ever seen, given his explosion in 2021. I definitely disagree with the hate on Chris Olave, though, Ray. So sorry, man. I saw Chris Olave.
Man, that's what we want to see. We want to see some arguing.
Part of his whole thing with the lack of yak is that most of his targets were in the end zone already in his Justin Fields year. Like, he had in his last 3 seasons, he's got 19 touchdowns on passes with at least 20 air yards. So like, he's like one of the best, if not the best, deep threat in this class. And I don't think he's not really talked up to be that, but he is amazing in that regard.
I don't disregard that at all. I totally agree with that part. It's just, Ohio State's got for sure a world-class strength program and all that good stuff. I just need to see you break arm tackles against, Michigan State, when you do get the chance, when you do catch that 10-yard comeback. So yeah, don't get me wrong. Absolutely top 16 player, at least on my board for sure. So great player. I'm just, there's some flaws in his game. And so for the Saints to trade up and go through all that, I got some questions there. And it's also something about those Ohio State backups transferring to the SEC and having, basically exploding onto the scene and then getting drafted highly and having more success than the guys ahead of them at Ohio State. I don't know, something going on there with Burrow and now maybe Jameson too. So.
Mm-hmm. And the Lions decided to trade up and get Jameson Williams when he got ejected from the Iron Bowl for targeting during a punt return.
Hey, dude, he goes hard. Goes hard, man.
I got to ask you guys, though, like before the ACL injury to Jameson Williams, was he yours number 1 wide receiver as well? Because quite honestly, he was top 10 pick in my opinion. Like, he's got elite route running. He's got the burst. He's got the ability to take the top off the defense. He's got good hands. He has the contested catch ability. He plays with the physicality that doesn't match his size. Like, Jameson Williams was receiver 2 in my opinion, with Olave 3 and Drake London 4. I am not a Drake London fan by any stretch of the imagination. What the Falcons did at number 8 overall to get him was mind-boggling to me. I thought they should have went Garrett Wilson there, and quite honestly, even after losing Calvin Ridley, Jameson Williams coming off the ACL injury, you're in a rebuild anyways. You don't need to have him right there immediately available. He's a perfect Calvin Ridley replacement. Like, that guy is good enough to be a true wide receiver 1, and for him to slide down and for the Lions to trade up to get him and not go quarterback, by the way, which blew me away. But for Jameson Williams to go as the 4th wide receiver off the board was just mind-boggling in my opinion.
Errol and I were
And
sitting
shout out
in
to the ACL there.
Errol and I were sitting in a restaurant watching the draft, and he said, "Oh, they got to trade up for a quarterback. Nobody else trades up for except for a quarterback." And I said, "Nope, watch the draft a wide receiver." I didn't think it was going to be Williams. I actually thought it was going to be Burks, but they ended up going with a receiver.
That's a whole nother world.
That would have been, yeah.
Lance, like you were saying, the Falcons, yeah, they didn't want to draft Jamison Williams. Maybe they're trying to break the pattern of not drafting Alabama wide receivers.
As everybody knows, we're talking to our draft panel: Lance Sanderson from the Mile High Huddle, Travis May from Rotoviz, John Vogel from Football Sapient, and obviously Ray Cotto for All 22. Two draft picks for you, Mr. Lance. Jordan Davis going 13, who I think could be the best player in this draft class, and Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame going to the Ravens the way he did. I can't believe he fell to the Ravens, by the way. But what did you think of those two picks?
Well, I want to hear John's thoughts on Jordan Davis first. He hasn't got to go here in a minute, so let's get Jordan in here really quick.
Go ahead.
Or John in here.
Yeah, excellent, awesome. You had those issues on the defensive line last year with the Eagles. Jordan Davis is a perfect fit for them because he's a rotational guy. He only played, I don't think he played over 320 snaps a single season in career. And so that's kind of the issue, is that you're going to get a rotational guy with him, and that was the limited snap counts and everything. But he's a monster. The Georgia practice tape, that came up during the draft broadcast that, you didn't see these guys do on the field because they were kind of asking him to do other things, showed that he could be just as dominant as a 1 or a 3 tech. And that's exactly what the Eagles need, is somebody on the inside to kind of float around, give Fletcher Cox some time off on the field, let him kind of catch his breath, and go after the quarterback. And Jordan Davis has done that before. If you watch the Clemson game, he did that up and down. And I thought that was really smart to go ahead and make that move up ahead of Baltimore because they were about to pick him there. So, make that happen, get that depth, and take advantage of it.
I heard a couple of teams trying to draft up for Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis went from, at one point before the combine, he was going to be in the 20s, jumped all the way up. Some people said he could have been in the top 10. And I really believe he could be the best defensive player in this class. I mean, that's how good he is. That's how talented he is. And if you look at Georgia's defensive line, by the way, Georgia broke a record. They had the most top three round picks we've ever seen from a college football team in history, in NFL history.
And total 15.
Yeah,
too.
total 15 too. So it's crazy how good the Georgia Bulldogs were this year. Arguably one of the greatest defenses and fastest defenses we've ever seen. Kyle Hamilton going from Notre Dame to arguably one of the best defenses in all of football, the Baltimore Ravens. What do you think, Lance?
So, if you turn on tape of Kyle Hamilton at Notre Dame, there's two teams in this draft that, well, really in any draft, especially when you're scouting defensive players, that you say that guy belongs on this team, and Kyle Hamilton belongs on the Baltimore Ravens. He's physical, he's fluid, he's fast, he covers really well. The guy tackles one of the best tackling safeties you've seen in the draft, and I don't give a damn about the 4.57 40. You realize that Ed Reed, the best single high center fielder safety we've ever seen play in the NFL, ran a 4.59. Like, he's slower than Kyle Hamilton by half a step. Like, this was a perfect fit. And for them to get a top 5 player, it was my number 2 overall player on the board. I had Ike Ekwonu number 1. But to get a top 5 player to fall all the way to 14, you don't have to move up to get him. And he fills a major need for your team. And he's a perfect fit for what you want to do. This is a home run selection for me.
Travis, obviously, I want to know your opinion on these two picks. Kenyon Green going to the Texans and Dotson going to the Washington Commanders.
Sure. And real quick on Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dude broke his ankle in October. So, I don't know why no one's like, hey, maybe the guy with a broken ankle is not going to run as fast as he can. It's like I don't know why that was not everywhere. Obviously that's why, because dude has crazy athleticism. So I'm not worried about him at all.